President Obama travels to Selma, Alabama today for an historic occasion. It was 50 years ago today that African Americans demanding the right to vote began a march from Selma, Alabama to the state capitol in Montgomery. They didn't get far before being met by violence. Among the reporters covering the civil rights movement was Bill Plante, now CBS News senior White House correspondent, and he's back in Selma for the anniversary. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Anthony. Well, this is the spot where the violence took place. And President Obama came here to Selma 8 years ago when he was a U.S. Senator running for president. And he said then, "I am here because somebody marched." So this morning, he will honor those marchers and the Voting Rights Act that followed their sacrifice. 50 years ago in Selma, blacks who wanted to register to vote were being turned away day after day from the steps of the courthouse.
Is Judge Clark stopping you from presenting yourself to register to vote?
The resistance in this part of Alabama was so strong that movement leaders told student organizer Bernard Lafayette to stay away.
The whites were too mean in Selma, and the blacks were too afraid. And the fear was that you would cause your family member to lose their job.
When the civil rights movement did come, a young activist named Jimmy Lee Jackson was shot by a trooper in a nearby town. 5 days later, on March 7, 1965, some 600 people set out to protest his killing with a march from Selma to Montgomery. They only made it 6 blocks.
You are ordered to disperse.
At the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the unresisting marchers were attacked by authorities. Amelia Boynton Robinson, now 103, was beaten unconscious on the side of the road.
The horses came up, the posse came up, the state troopers came up, the police department came up and started beating us, and I stood up there. Then finally I fell.
Sheriff Jim Clark refused to get help for the injured protesters.
They said, "Send an ambulance." And he said, "I'm not sending any ambulance over there. If there's anybody that is dead, let the buzzards eat them."
That's what Jim Clark said. If there's anybody who's dead, let the buzzards
eat them.
The images of what would become known as Bloody Sunday shocked the nation and became a turning point in the civil rights movement. 2 weeks later, with troops now protecting the route, Dr. Martin Luther King led a crowd of thousands across the same bridge. I was there for CBS News.
Have all the activities of the past weeks in Selma come to fruition now? Is this the grand climax?
I would say this and its culmination in the march on the Capitol on Thursday.
The events in Selma allowed President Lyndon Johnson to push for the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Every American citizen must have an equal right to vote.
In Selma and towns across the South, black Americans could no longer be kept from the polls.
What was your maiden name before you B-A-R-N-E-T-T?
But for all it accomplished, Bernard Lafayette says the civil rights movement didn't go far enough.
We changed the law, but we did not work to change the attitudes of people. And that is, I have to admit, and I'm old enough to admit, that was a mistake.
Amelia Boynton says now it's time for a new generation to take up the fight. Have things gotten better?
And as I told so many people who had approached me about what we did, and they would say, "Well, we appreciate what you've done. We're standing on your shoulders." And my curse word was, "Get the heck off of my shoulders and get to work."
She's still got the spirit. Today, look for the president to talk about voting rights, to urge Congress to write new protections now that the Supreme Court has freed states from getting federal approval for election changes. Anthony, Vanita?
I love that, Bill. Get the heck off of my shoulders and get to work. I understand you're sitting down with President Obama later today, Bill. What are you going to ask him?
Well, we have a chance to chat with him certainly about race. He hasn't talked much about race as president. He did a little bit before he got elected, but he's preferred to stay away from it. So this is an obvious opportunity to do that. We also want to ask him about Hillary Clinton's emails, for example, and other current topics.
We are all eager to see that interview. Bill Plante in Selma, Alabama, thank you. And you can see part of their conversation tonight on the CBS Evening News and much more of the interview tomorrow on CBS Sunday Morning and Face the Nation.